randomly freeze.
Episode 221 of the Brewgooders, the beer comics, or geekery podcast. Frozen in the middle is a resident Elsa, is fucking Andrew. And on the far right, but as far as we were not a member of the far right, former Kingdom FM movie reviewer, John Bruce.
Hello there. I've got a face for radio.
Stu should be joining us.
Radio Star, indeed, to the Buggles. Remember the Buggles?
Yep.
Yeah.
Radio killed the Radio Star. Yeah,
that's a great song.
Yeah.
Like the Presidency of the United States of America did a really good cover of it.
That was one of the first singles I ever had. It must have been it's a 70s song, isn't it? One of the first singles I remember ever had buying myself was that, the Buggles. Probably sometime in the 70s. I don't know where.
I think it was the 80s. I think it was the 80s. It was on on the Wedding Singer soundtrack.
Yeah. It was was it not like was it not like a response to MTV, which would have been 1980, I think. Like it was But anyway, we've also got a special guest who will be joining us in a couple of minutes. We've got Peter Taylor back on the show. Talked to us about the most recent Pioneers Kickstarter, which is doing amazingly well. Kickstarter, and also he's just a good human, and we like to have him on the show. So excited for that. How have things been, guys?
1979. So
was it? Oh. Where was MTV then?
I just want you to bask in the glow of your wrongness and my rightness.
Sorry, I keep forgetting you're old. So yeah.
1979, September 1979. So I was only right by 3 months. Sorry.
The council. No, that's fine. When was MTV? In my head canon, that song was a response to MTV.
So MTV launched 1st of August 1981.
So obviously it wasn't that.
Before that, they still had, like, in this country, and anyway, we had Top of the Pops, which up until a certain point, early 70s, it was either somebody singing live, or it was a group of girls called Pan's People dancing on the stage. And then the first
video, their dances were very good as well. Like, I've seen some of their dances because they're obviously having the improv based on the song they were dancing for, and it was just...
depending on what was number one, it could be Pan's People dancing to something by Enter Sandman or something like that. But yeah, I didn't.
I wish they were still about when you wish they were still about during like when Rage Against the Machine got the Christmas #1. That would have been good. Rage Against the Machine could not be here, so we're just going to have Pan's People.
This is much as some dancers getting ready for that over the week. How do we killing in the name of? It wouldn't work. So.
We should make it work.
Music's come a long way.
What are you drinking beer tonight, Andrew?
I am. Being in the Brewgooders, I've got our own beer that we make here.
That's right, yeah.
No, I've got a Fonio Session IPA, Brooklyn Brewery. I don't know if that's in Brooklyn or the Brewgooders come from Brooklyn or not.
Brewgooders are Glaswegians, I think.
Well, there you go, so I didn't understand this because you got these Camden breweries that isn't in Camden, and Jersey Lager, isn't in Lager, and New England IPAs that are only made in New England. It's just crazy.
They're styles, I think, aren't they?
In collaboration with Brooklyn Brewery, but it's Fonio Session IPA. So we'll judge it on how we normally judge IPAs. Does it look like piss? It's actually not that see-through. It's pretty. Is opaque the right word for something you can see through, or is opaque one you can't see through?
Opaque.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's you that uses that word. You usually have like filtered and unfiltered when you're talking about lager, and like it tends to be cloudier the more if it's not unfiltered.
It's a session IPA. I think it's probably filtered because it's quite clear by comparison to some. It's not got as much bite. As some IPAs, I went into my local co-op to pick up some beer, and my options were, for IPAs anyway, was Joker, Brewdog, or Brewgooders, and that was it.
Yeah.
Actually, I was hoping to pick up something a little darker. I was hoping to pick up a stout or a porter or something like that. And my options for that were Brewdog Stout or Guinness. And neither one really appealed to me in this climate. So IPA it is, but it's okay.
Yeah. It's a relatively alright choice, though.
4 out of 10.
I think when we first started this, right at the beginning of the Brewgooders, like co-op was just a bit of a no-no. Like I would never go to co-op for beer. But like Joker's IPA is quite good as well. That's a Williams Brothers number, isn't it? That's quite good.
Sorry?
So Joker's is Williams Brothers, so that's quite a good one. So
Joker's alright. It's like a drinking IPA, something we get in a pub, something we get everywhere. We just try to find something a wee bit different. I'm not, unlike you, I've not got within walking distance. I've not got like a craft beer shop.
Okay.
I've got to actually get on a bus to go there and things like that. But I should make more of an effort to pick up some different beers.
Yeah.
The co-op in Rosyth, we're lucky they've got, like, the first 3 years or so I was there, they didn't have any dark beer at all. I had to keep on asking them, have you not got, not spectacular, like a Best or, John Smith's or something like that. But they basically had, it's a standard village co-op.
Yeah.
18 rows of Tennent's lager. And then some cider and a half a shelf of Guinness. And that was their beer. And the Guinness was in the beers of the world part,
Internationally brewed. Yeah.
International.
I'm drinking a River Street American Pale Ale. It's from Birmingham's River Street. So I think it's a Birmingham-based brewery. So I don't know why they're making an American Pale Ale, because they're not in America. It's not Birmingham, it's Birmingham.
Yeah.
That's this. The brewery I think is called Pre-Assembly Brewing. I think based in Birmingham. So it looks like this.
That's a stolen Beaverton glass.
Yeah. No, I've got two. One stolen, one I bought. And I realised I could just steal them. So,
fair enough.
Yes, okay. I have been really unwell the last week. It's not massively.
Anything spectacular this week, John, or is it just Tizer or Iron Brew? Or
it's just Bar's Lemonade.
Just Bar's Lemonade.
I can see it right through it. Look,
it's class.
It's very healthy. I'm struggling with beer just now. I don't know if you guys. I don't know if you were telling us to talk about you've been quite unwell recently as well, Andrew. I've had like this cold that's maybe about 3 weeks, and I did the tests for COVID and everything. It's not that, but like I've gone right off beer in quite a major way. Like I was in Newcastle last weekend and tried some really interesting beers and wasn't getting any of the notes on them or anything. It was horrible.
Taste buds possibly. I mean, it's like I said, I as you're a little bit aware, I had COVID a couple of weeks ago, and it's rife in the community again. Now it's all over the place. People aren't getting as ill as they were, but still, a lot of people have got it. But, COVID can do something to your taste buds, and even just a heavy head cold can throw your taste buds into disarray. It could be horrible. You never know what will happen. You might develop a taste for fruit-based lagers and carbon bun flavoured stout.
I had when I was in Newcastle last week, I had a cereal and milk IPA. It was good.
Even though that's wrong.
But I was really.
Do you know what Roy Kent says? Do you know what Roy Kent says when he sees Jamie's vanilla flavoured vodka or something like that? What does he say? Such a child. Remember when you're nuts? You're nuts, Colin. Tells him to leave Neil.
No, I am. Yeah. No, I just it's been quite disappointing. Like I bought a very expensive beer in Newcastle, and I just got none of the good stuff out of it. So yeah, definitely this cold has totally run a number on my taste buds. It's been pretty right.
She should just
Yeah, and I'm afraid to say,
sorry.
yeah, I'm afraid to say that that's kind of the same. Like this could be the best American pale ale I've ever drank. And I'm getting nothing from it, which is quite disappointing. I might just move on to lager after this. But shall we bring Peter on for a bit and see how he's doing it? So Peter Taylor's friend of the podcast. He's doing a Kickstarter for Pioneers, which is smashing on Kickstarter just now. Over 2 weeks left to go, and it's like 200 and something percent past its target, which is incredible. But Peter's a really good, solid dude. He's helped me out a bunch in the last couple of years. Did some really good stuff on the Jeff the Juniors. Did stuff for our friend Tom's mate's cat's birthday, which was really cool. He did a 2-page comic, which is I'll draw the route map of like who like he did a really good job, and I'm really happy to have him back on. So without further ado, here's here.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello.
Wave.
My best crackerjack wave.
How's
How
it
are you,
going? You right?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. Apart from, as I was saying, I've thrown my back out. So if I look a little static or grab my desk and hold on for dear life at some point, then you know what? I've had a large handful of ibuprofen before I came on, which should make the beer entertaining, if nothing else. But thank you for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's nice to have you. Yeah, congratulations on. Obviously, we were supposed to have you on last week to talk about Pioneers, Blood and Stars parts 1 to 3. We look like it looks like it's been an amazing week though. You're currently of a goal of $1,000. You're on 3,781, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's good. I do try and keep the goal low. I try and keep the goal because I found in the early campaigns that I did that stress of will I make the funding was absolutely crippling. It's it's really hard to get through and really hard to think any further than that. And then I learned the lesson of, well, look, if you've already got sunk cost into the thing and all you're really looking for is the money to get the thing printed and make it nice for everybody, then try and focus on that as your goal, and everything else is gravy. And since I've started doing that, the campaigns have got a lot less stressful and allowed me to focus on making the book as good as I can and without that worry. So yeah, and it's going great. We had an really amazing first. We funded in 3 hours, which is bizarre. Wow. And we doubled that in 12 hours. Since then, things have been moving along okay. You always also think, oh, this is the one that's going to bomb. And then something at the back, he says, oh, maybe this is the one that will really take off. And I'm floating somewhere in between those at the moment. But if you'd have asked me where I'd like to be at this point, it's exactly where I am. So I'm really pleased, really, really pleased.
That's amazing. You've got, as I say, 17 days left to go. So 2 weeks on Sunday before.
Yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
I haven't been able to do any promotion the last week because my back went out, so I haven't even been able to crawl to the computer to do anything. I think you saying about your Facebook being down last week was probably about the last conversation I had. So hopefully I will have the strength over the next couple of days to give it a real good push and see where we can go.
It's amazing that how have you found, so obviously we've talked about your previous Kickstarters. How have you found this Kickstarter compared to other ones in terms of that stress management and stuff like that?
The first couple of days was a real high, and you do have to watch that because you can kind of get carried away with that first 24 hours. Oh, you think you can't help it. Your brain goes, oh, if I did half of what I've done in the last 12 hours through the rest of the campaign, I'll be a millionaire by Christmas or whatever. You can't help your brain thinking that. But I try and stay grounded and stay thankful for every single supporter and just stay focused on a story. I think we've said it before. I really, really believe it's good and going well. And I think if you put a good product out, that people who find it tend to stay with it. The number of sort of repeat backers that we've had is, I couldn't tell you the exact numbers, but it surprised me every time how many people come back to it, because everyone's always said, you know, you release the first one and you don't get anything like that for the second one or the third one. And we have, and people really, really do seem to enjoy it. The only challenge is getting eyes on it, which I'm sure is something that, you know, we're all quite familiar with. You must hear it a lot. So
actually, you can say, I mean, that's it. At all levels, comics are the same. I owned a comic shop for 10 years, and issue ones will always sell pretty good. More difficult if you're just coming into it, try to get people to buy your issue one. But if you do a good issue one, if you can maintain 80% of the sales of issue one to come back and buy issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, then you know you're there. Too many comics these days, and I'm particularly talking about, I'm not going to call them professional comics, but the big guy comics. The issue 1, you'll sell issue 1, and then you'll sell 30% what you sold for issue 1 for issue 2, and then if you're lucky, you'll do, you know, 1/10 of what you do for issue 1. So the fact that you've got people coming back for issue 2, for issue 3, for issue going forward is testament to how good the story and how good the writing and stuff like that is, because that's not normal, you know.
I know. I mean, the issue 2 was incredible because we nearly doubled what we had for issue 1 on issue 2. So that's as you're saying, right. So, you know, if I get anywhere near that again, I'll be really happy. And as I say, I'm thrilled with where we are at the moment. Absolutely thrilled. It's so lovely. I say go back a couple of years, because I've talked to you guys before, but I still feel fairly new at this, and I still feel like I'm guessing with everything, you know, that I'm doing. And just to know that I delivered the last book to 14 countries. People in 14 countries reading something I wrote and draw. It's just amazing, just absolutely amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm so lucky.
Jeff's about to
14 countries. Amazing. Yeah, I'm going to play the video. I just I was waiting for a segue. But it's just going to say, yeah. Do you want to tell us about where the story is at the moment, then, and what folk can expect from the next issue?
Do you want me to tell you before the video or after the video?
You just
could talk over that. I think.
Tell us. Tell us anything. Yeah.
The video is really, really cool, because the video was done by a friend of mine named Daz, who's actually he does videography and all these special effects and things. I literally just provided him with with stills, and he put all the effects and everything all over it, and I think it's just beautiful. I know you haven't got the music up. Go and listen to the track. The track that he played over it is something. It wasn't commissioned specially for it, but he got permission from the artist to use it, and it just goes so well with it. It just looks brilliant. I'm so pleased with what he did.
It's incredible.
Isn't it great? He will work for money.
Yes.
If people want videos done, he loves comics. He absolutely loves comics, and he would love to do more of these. I know he would. So yeah, we didn't even storyboard it particularly. He just grabbed some of the images that he really liked, and we just see where we went. Don't watch the last bit; it's cringe. It's just me talking and feeling.
I watched it earlier. It was the same as your last Kickstarter. I remember last time you were on, I put the video on and it was just you talking. It was like, okay, I should have watched this. So I made sure to do it. I made sure to do it this time. So yeah, what is it? What is Pioneers, Blood and Stars?
Okay. So the original tagline that we wrote for it, I think, says it best, right? If when mankind reaches for the stars, there will be stowaways. Okay, and I think that's a great setup for it. So what we've got is the early days of sort of corporate space exploration. Think, if you guys are old enough, think Sean Connery's Outland. Yeah. So we've got a grubby mining colony on Enceladus, and there's a funny story about why it's on Enceladus as well. I tossed a coin with a gentleman called George O'Connor, who writes comics and has just and we were talking and realised that we were both writing stories about vampires on Mars. So we tossed a coin, and he got to call his Vampires on Mars, and I had to move mine to Enceladus. So, but it was kind of good because it did start. It made me think of that of that Outland film, and a lot of the setting is kind of similar to that sort of. So it's a gritty mining colony, ice mining actually, because we're running out of water, usable water, down here. So all these things sort of together. And into that world, we've thrown a vampire. Not there's a vampire running around my spaceship vampire. This isn't Alien. But what she is, she knows she has to feed, and she really she's looking for a quiet life, if that's possible for a vampire. She's really trying to work out if her species can actually survive off Earth. What are the challenges? What's going to be new? Now, there's questions around this. Has she been sent there by someone? Did she arrive of her own accord? Is she really, what is she fed up with? Is she running from something? And that's kind of what we lead into a bit. She's running from something, which we will find out more about, in the last episodes. But something odd has happened to her since she's arrived. She's started making some friends, right? For a 200-year-old vampire that treats humans as cattle. This is fairly odd behaviour, and she doesn't really know what's going on. So you've kind of got a story in there about, I call it unlikely friendships. There's what I call an annoying little sister character called Began, who I tried in the first issue to write with an Irish accent. I don't know why particularly. I just thought that's the way she spoke in my head, and I've kind of stopped that because it was becoming a little bit false, and I didn't want to get into a hoity-toity kind of kind of pastiche of an accent. So I've kind of dropped that. But the point being, she's kind of an annoying little sister. She's befriended Lilu, the vampire. And Lilu is, first of all, she was like, okay, I'll just file this one for feeding later if I have to. Then she found that she's fighting for her. And in some of the challenges that they meet, she's rescuing her. And at the end of issue 2, they got trapped. Issue 2 was about Lilu really fighting her desire and trying to understand her desire to feed, and was Began going to be a victim, or was there something more special happening here? And at the end of episode 2, they were trapped in the wreckage of Lilu's space freighter. She's a pilot by trade. There's a lot of trouble on this on Enceladus. There's terrorism, industrial accidents, all that kind of stuff that you get with the sort of corporate intrigue of somewhere, a situation like that. So they're trapped together, and we literally left it on the last page as a cliffhanger that Lilu was going to turn. And in fact, we talked with my editor a lot. Do I leave in the last panel of the last page Lilu's face going pale? Is she going to pounce? Well, actually, we know that she is going to pounce. There is going to be an attack. So we just went full on, and she turned in that last panel. And it's a question of who's getting out of that ship, how are they getting out of that ship, and what happens next. And that's what you get in issue 3. And what you will get in there is some things that you absolutely will not be expecting. So I know, Jeff. I know you've read both the issues, and if you in episode 3, you'll be surprised where it goes. I hope. I'm sure you'll be surprised. I hope you'll like it.
How do you find that as trying to create that? I was talking about a comic that I read this week in a wee while, but I remember when you're moving that sort of question on, what's going to happen, when's it going to happen? There's that dread and that expectation. How do you find as a writer, assembling that in a way that's satisfying? I read a comic this week where they were moving towards something, and then when it happened, I remember feeling a bit meh. And obviously, that I imagine as a writer, you never want your readers to go meh. And that's a fear you've ever had when you've been putting when you've been putting your stuff together. But like throwing in the unexpected, how do you navigate that? Is that an issue you feel like you've ever had?
Wondering if it will land is really the issue. The editor that I've worked with up to now has said a couple of really, really helpful things to me, but quite critical things. He says I do tend to throw a lot into an issue, and the pace I have to be a little careful of pacing and not stuffing too many ideas into the plot. He likes it when I put the ideas in the graphics, in the art, the little tweaks and things that we can do and little maybe clues that we get in the art, but he doesn't like to throw too much into the dialogue, which obviously is the main storytelling tool. So I've tried to keep that real, for Vampires in Space, as real a dialogue as I feel the conversations would actually go, and therefore that makes the plot real. If I write a scene, and I do regard myself as an artist who writes rather than a writer who draws. So if there's anything that I get imposter syndrome about anything, but the writing is the bit I worry about the most, which is tends to be why I like to work with editors who are very strong-willed and and say, Pete, just no, and they do. So I find if the story is being told right through the dialogue and it feels believable for the characters, then the plot tends to work, and I don't stress too much about it. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it does to me.
No,
I've been dragging my heels quite a bit on something that the guys know I've been trying to do for a couple of years now, in that I'm not a writer, but I do draw, and I have in my head all the visuals. All the visuals are there, but it's the dialogue. So the thing I was going to ask you was, how quickly did the story come together for you? I mean, did you have points of the story that you wanted to hit at a certain point, and then it's just a case of trying to get from A to B to C?
I move things fairly fluidly. It is a great question, because it is something I feel that it's like one of those puzzles where you move all the bits around to make the face, to make the finished thing. Now I want all of these pieces, and I think very visually, probably like you do, John. I think of it in terms of scenes. That's the other thing editor said, is because you write a good scene, everything is quite cinematic in my head. So I find, okay, so that scene, and I block things out and say, okay, that scene is going to take 4 pages, that scene is going to take 6 pages, and certain of the things I can move around a little bit, so that somebody told me the other day actually that issue 1 and 2 were the same length, and they couldn't believe it because the pace of them was quite different. And I said, actually, the most surprising thing you said is that they were the same length, because I don't plan for a certain length. It's if the story runs 3 pages over, I'm phoning the printer and saying it's going to be 32 pages instead of 28 pages, I'm afraid. So it's in those blocks, and I do move things around. Funnily enough, as I was drawing this issue and going through the script, when I got to about halfway through, I cut 2 pages completely. I thought, I'm just rambling here, and this scene isn't working for me. So 2 pages we lifted out, which gave me the ability to put something else in. I do at the script, when the script meets the drawn page, things can change quite a lot for me.
Yeah,
because of that cinematic, vision. And as I own the story, I can do that. If I was drawing someone else's story, as I've done a few times now, I have because I don't know how this is supposed to be done, I will go back to the writer. I've been back to a writer a couple of times saying, I just thought that this might work better. And sometimes I said, look, Pete, could you just stick to what I wrote down, please? That would be really helpful. But other times they've said, actually, yeah, that's a reasonable interpretation of it. Have at it and see where it goes. So
I've collaborated with other artists on
as a
pieces
writer
of art. So as opposed to writing itself, and it is true. It's like, okay, well, what if I have this idea? So it's a case of not getting too precious about your own ideas, and the fact that you're able to drop 2 pages out to fit something else in that will help the flow. I find that quite impressive. Because certainly ideas that I've had, I've dropped lots of ideas because it's just going to be too big, and I don't want it to be like a magnum opus. It's meant to be a bit of fun, so I don't want to spend years of my time doing this,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting you're saying as well there, like about just as talking to artists, because when you say like you're an artist that like writes rather than a writer who draws, I find myself in the kind of writer who sometimes draws can. And I know that every writer is different. I know, but I love that collaboration aspect. And obviously, like you've done bits and pieces for me, Peter, where it has been just like I've come up with an idea. I've sent you like pretty shit script, to be quite honest, and like your additions have improved on the story. Like I always come back to the one of my favorite panels in Jeff the Junior, to the point I've lifted it and used it in advertisements for other things and put it on the cover of Jeff the Juniors too, was the idea that the visual assisted referee team were fanning around. Like I had them I think the only instructions I gave to you was like for our team in their room trying to fix a password or something. And you had them like one of the guys messing around with the Rubik's Cube, another one eating, and them just not really paying attention. And I was like, that's great. That's totally the essence of the story. And that was like, yeah. But I do know other writers who'd be like, "Why is he eating something that wasn't in the script?" It's like, and so I can imagine it's quite a sometimes quite a challenging balance, but it's what I particularly enjoy. Like I love that. I love that.
I like
Andrew.
How
did you find that, Andrew, with working with Colin on your script for the Brewgooders? Yeah, how did that differ from what you had in your head to what ended up on the final page?
I'd never worked with Colin or indeed anyone before, so I did a very, very simple thing where I had mine was a story basically without any dialogue. So I had a description of how I envisaged the panel, and then this is the wording that goes with that panel. It was only 18 panels. It was a 3-page thing, based around a single idea, almost like a Tales of the Unexpected sort of style thing. But yeah, I very much, because this was the first time I'd ever worked with Colin, or even anyone, I thought I had to do everything and write it for it. And I read an article a few months ago about Alan Moore and Dave McKean when they were doing Watchmen. Had never worked really together. So for issues 1 and 2, Alan Moore was writing pages and pages of this is what I think it'll look like, this will be the panel, this will be the panel, this will be the panel. By the time they got to 4, 5, 6, 7, he was doing a minimal, like, here's a dialogue, there's a thing. Trusted him to go where he was. So, that's how you develop as a partnership, I think. When you're doing everything yourself, I mean, I don't know if it was you, I said this to Peter the last time we were on, I think as a writer, you always want it to appear on the page like you envisaged it. But you can't always get that with depending on the artist when you're the artist as well. This is your vision. Exactly, which is great because you get to see exactly what you envisaged.
It does.
If it doesn't work, but
well, yeah, then it's all your fault. It does. It does give you freedom that you don't always have when you're working with another writer. I recently did a thing. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to gainsay it. I find people are really receptive. Every time I've said, could we maybe do this, or would this work a little better, or work? That they've given me the right to do it. I don't think anyone's ever turned around and said, no, just do what I said on the page, because most people want that collaboration, right? I think collaboration is absolutely key. Funnily enough, I was having a discussion with Falk, who does the colouring on Pioneers, a while ago, and it got very existential, the conversation, actually. But I was basically saying, why don't you ever come back to me and say, change the drawing? And I think because he's an artist, right? And I say this without trying to sound like I'm digging for compliments or anything. I can draw and I know how to tell a story. He's an artist. He's an actual artist, right? These things are, in his head, and the work he produces is phenomenal. And he doesn't colour very often, but he's colouring my book because he likes it. And he said, no, it's my job as the colourist to just enhance and fulfil your vision. And I said, no, mate, you're part of this. I want you to go, that bottle on that table doesn't work, or that body pose doesn't tell the story properly. I love that collaboration. Okay, when you get the size of Disney, you're probably watering concepts down to the point that they're a little bit bland and mishmash. But when there's, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people maybe in a room, I think what comes out is always going to be better than what you'd have with one person sitting in the room.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think we've talked about, again, I've talked about this with John a lot. Most TV and movies and stuff like these days, certainly most good TV is written in committee almost. It's no, for every Aaron Sorkin who can write every word himself, you've got like a writer's room who are all collaborating. And if you look at, say, some of my favourite programmes, things like The Office and Parks and Recreation and things like this, they're all written, Mike Shure, I think, would be the guy who was the main guy. Because you need somebody who's in charge. But the number of people that are there, it works better. And that's why collaborations tend to be so good.
And they can, one of the best things that they do is they stop you being stuck on a pet idea.
Yeah.
Then if they're not afraid to go, yeah, I know you mention it every time we talk, but it sucks. You really have got to stop talking about that.
That's like that Kevin Smith story, isn't it? That's like, did you mention the polar bears? Did you mention the spider?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Superman story, yeah.
It's just good for it's just good as a writer. As a writer, I find one of my favorite things to do is join I when I get close to finishing any piece of writing, there's like writing groups online that you can go on. That's maybe like a Zoom call, an hour-long Zoom call. And I did that particularly in the early days of Spirit of Enki, because it was like sometimes what you write, I found some of the stuff I wrote was shit, and it was like, or like you were saying, you get stuck in an idea. I find I would get stuck in a plot device, and it's like, how do I move from A to B with it just working? And just having a writer going, you don't need to show them walking down the flight of stairs. You could just assume that the reader's smart enough to know that if they're in a new location, they walk there. It's that whole thing is you never see a toilet on the Starship Enterprise. It's just you just assume that there's parts of the process that you're not going to be privy to.
Yeah.
So do you know when I first said I was going to work with Colin on our book, and I had this story, and it ended up not being the story that we did. It was a completely different story, because the first story that I sent up for a 3-page comic was like 6.5 A4 pages of prose. It was like a short story. I didn't keep like that. But and he read that and he says it's a good story, but that's not how you write comics. And I'd never written stories and things like this. I'd never written. I was like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, you can't describe how somebody stood pensively at the door, and things like this.
You see them standing at the door. You know what their hand is placed on. You know where their other hand is. And
the room about them looks like, and things like that. You know where the door is and what the door looks onto and things like that. But yeah, as a starter, you've got to realise that you didn't have to write all that down.
Yeah. It's funny when you're drawing your own words as well. You find also you get the opposite problem, is you don't write anything.
Because
you go, it's all in here, and then you come back to it to draw it, and you think, I've literally no clue what the point of this conversation was, because you haven't written enough structure around it to really say what was going on. So, and at my age, you don't want to be relying on your memory for all that stuff. So I tend to write. I've taken lessons I've learned writing or taking other people's sort of scripting styles, and I kind of write that in my own now. And I think it helps Falk as well. He likes that style, that sort of level of direction in his colouring. So, but yeah, it is one of the things I do little things in the campaign, like a sort of a companion zine kind of thing. And in there this time, I haven't shown it before, but this time I'm going to show how much the original script deviates from what ends up in the comic, because I do think it's only of casual interest to people, I'm sure, but it is.
No, people love that kind of stuff. People love work in progress stuff. Yeah, I put posts up on my art page. Do you want to see work in progress stuff? And people love that kind of thing. Yeah, a peek behind the curtain to see how how it's made. People love it. So yeah, definitely.
I like them. There's a couple artists that do the Michael Philp does them quite a lot on his, like, because is it Procreate, when you draw and Procreate it, you can record what your lines, and Michael Philp does that quite a lot, and I know that he's the one I know that does it. I know loads of guys that does it, but he's the one that comes to mind, and I love it. Like, see when they're like, he's like, here's me drawing this scene, and that he did it for the Brewgooders anthology. He did one of the he drew one of the panels on Procreate and had it recorded, and going like, because
the great thing about Procreate is that you didn't need to record anything. If you use an iPad, you do your drawing, you do your layers and stuff like this, and it just remembers it, and you can just press a button at any time, and it creates this. However,
amazing.
Depending on how long it's taking you to do it, it's pretty amazing.
I love it. Like, I think artists should be sharing that more often. It's brilliant. Like, it's fascinating.
I use Clip Studio, and I think that does it as well, although you may have to press the record button. I've got to be honest, I don't use it, and I haven't done it because I don't think people want to watch me rubbing stuff out for 3.5 hours, because that seems to be the vast majority of the time I spent is with the eraser thing going, no, it doesn't work, do it again. But
the first software I used was Clip Studio. I bought it. I think it was called Manga Studio at the time. It was fundamentally the same thing. The only reason I use Procreate now is because I like to sit in my armchair. Clip Studio, you've got to have.
No, it does an iPad version now.
Oh, an iPad version?
Yes, for the last couple of years, it does an iPad version. And funnily enough, it was completely designed. It wasn't a porting app, so it's really clunky. The iPad app, most people say, is actually better than the the app on your PC. It's designed for it, and it's good. I don't use it myself. I just find the iPad too small.
Because you obviously you got a contract, you can only have it on one device at a time. Do you be able to transfer that over? I'm not asking because you'll not check the Clip Studio. I've not used it.
I use the Clip Studio $70 a year subscription, so it's not anything like Procreate, I don't think, in terms of the cost, and you can use that on both devices.
Okay, cool.
Definitely
it was a one-off payment I made to Clip Studio quite a few years ago.
Yeah,
Smith Studios it wasn't it? Smith. I can't remember. But,
so
anyway,
how you find the other part of the comic stuff, Peter? Have you been doing cons? Have you been out and about with it?
I haven't. I'm not an experienced con goer. I did one either as a creator or as a visitor. In fact, I've visited two. One was in Glasgow, and that was by accident. We were there on my son's stag weekend. 5 days. How can you do that to your own father? 5 days stag weekend in Glasgow. It was so fun. On a Saturday afternoon, the Glasgow concert was on, and that was literally, it was 8 years ago, because they just had their wedding anniversary, and 7 years ago. And that was literally the first con I ever walked into. So that was great. And I was just a customer, and I met all sorts of really cool people, including Frank Whiteley, which was like my hero moment. And I got a table at a con the Olympia one in London, and it was a very strange experience. I know people say you get better at it. I will sit here now and say I sold nothing the entire weekend. Most people were there, I think, to see Jodie Whittaker. It was a con. The artist alley was very small. It was an awesome thing. It was a brilliant thing. I absolutely loved walking around and being part of it. But I didn't sell much. My other son, not the one who got married a few years later, and his wife came down to help me on the Sunday, and they both have sales experience. So without being rude or forcible to anyone, just being really natural and talking to people in a way that I struggle to, they covered my costs for the trip in about 2 hours, just by being nice. Whereas I'm a bit shy and a bit uncomfortable in large groups and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, I won't say it put me off, but I haven't done one since. There's not really much that's very local to me, and I've applied for a few things and I couldn't get a table. I applied to Thought Bubble. A, couldn't get a table, and B, I was going to go as a visitor, and that was the week that 2 weeks before my wife fell down the stairs and broke a hip. Which is why what you can see behind me, that we have a lift in the house now. So we didn't even get to that. So I do want to do some, and I'm really, really nervous about doing them. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if I will really ever do another one.
You have to nail there's so many people who are there. If you've got to Thought Bubble, there are so many creators, and the ones who sit behind their desk waiting for you to come to them are the ones who didn't make any money. Because the ones who will stop everybody, oh man, nice costume, oh, how are you doing? No, let me guess who you are.
Exactly.
And immediately get people talking to you. But they're the ones who make the money, and then they become interested in your book.
And I was sitting behind a guy, and his name has temporarily escaped me. I do apologise to him because he's a wonderful, wonderful chap. And I watched him all weekend, and we went and had a beer one evening. He writes a couple of books, one called Hendrix, which is the name of the deputy in Jaws. So it's a continuation of the Jaws thing with that guy. He also does a book called Die Hard of the Dead. His name literally temporarily escaped me, and it's a brilliant book full of zombies and John Thing from Die Hard, which he tweaks the name slightly to get away from the copyright issues. And they're brilliant books. But the way he did it, he gave me his chair on day one, said, I won't be using that. So I'm sitting there going, hello. And he's on his feet the entire weekend, being nice and approachable. And what was his tagline? Oh, yeah, he just would reach out to people and say, Die Hard with zombies. And all of a sudden, he's in a conversation. It was just wonderful. And he's so natural and so good at it that I watched and I tried to learn, but I certainly didn't nail it that weekend. But I know what you mean.
Matt Stapleton, maybe. I think I'm just having a wee quick look. Was it Matt?
Yeah, Matt Stapleton. Yeah. Awesome.
I didn't know him. I thought I'd have a wee look when I was thinking there because it sounds like an interesting idea.
Yeah, it sounds like that's Dave Crannon's sales tactic as well. Like I have tabled a lot with Dave, and as somebody else that struggles with sales, I'm quite good at engaging people with their t-shirts. I'm not very good at it's like the seven steps of selling or something. Like there's a process, and step 7 is step 6 is seal the deal. I get to step 5 and then skip to step 7, which is thank them and say goodbye. It's the bit where you have to turn and go, so are you interested and would you like to buy it?
ABC, that's what you always remember. There's only one step. It's always be closing. Yeah. Basically, when you're standing there, and don't be shy, because this is what you didn't do. Don't be shy to go. You got to take it then.
Exactly.
You give them all the information, and then they'll go.
It's so strange. As I say, I can talk to you guys, all night about this stuff. But there's something about the face-to-face that I haven't quite nailed yet, particularly when you're looking, but I've said to you guys, people who actually see the book tend to want to, to have a look at it. So I'm not, I'm not trying to tell people something they don't want or I don't believe in. It's just not me yet. So I'd like to give it another go.
I think with the larger cons you've gone to, people that like you say there to see the Jodie Whittakers and the big celebs and whatnot. So the trickiest thing running your smaller local ones. I don't do so much as I used to do. I think the last time I did was with these chaps up here in Glasgow. We did a nighttime adult event, which it was okay. It was a good event. It was weirdly targeted, I thought. But yeah, it's a case of okay, hey, how you doing? Just engaging people in conversation. And if they like the look of what you've got, say, look, well, have a look at what I've got here. And just say, more often than not, I think maybe 20% of the time you get a sale after going through a big massive spiel. But go through this book, you never know. And sometimes when people say to you, we'll be back, and they don't, sometimes they do actually come back. So that was a treat.
Yeah, I want to try. I want to keep going.
You seem to be doing okay. Like looking at what you're doing there with the Kickstarter and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys who start with the books and stuff like this, and they never get to that where you even are now on 3 books, where you're 4 times your things like that. So the book's obviously good, and it's obviously people want it, or you wouldn't be reaching these sort of figures. So And by the way, it's what you said about Dave Crana and stuff like this. Always do conventions with a friend. Always do conventions with a convention partner. Share a table with somebody else. And so that you can constantly always be talking to them. You'll get better at it. But yeah, if you've got somebody who can do that, I think just talking to people about.
Well, I shared a table.
I'm quite good at things like that, but
yeah. Well, I shared a table with Jeff, didn't I, Jeff? And I was like, well, it's my stuff, but then here's Jeff's stuff over here. Check this out, and you sort of for the anthology as well. So that's the benefit of my first ever convention. I didn't think I had enough stuff on my table, so I shared with a friend, and it turned out we both had more than enough for one 6-foot table. But he wasn't as good as talking up what he had, so I would talk up his stuff as well as mine, and he ended up selling tons of stuff, even stuff he didn't want to sell. They thought, that's not very good. I said, you know what, that's going to sell like gangbusters. And it did, and he made more cash than me, which was pretty cool, But yeah, so some people are just not confident in what they bought, and I'm like,
it's a confidence.
That's going to sell. It is, yeah.
So learn about the clientele. Learn to spot the costume. And always ask people about their costume. People love to be stopped and asked about their costume.
Oh, they do.
Sometimes too much.
And then my thing was catch them with something they can't say no to. Like, listen, do you like puppies? Who's going to say no that I don't like puppies? Well, see if you like puppies, you'll love this. Come here, have a look.
I'm actually going to try
look in my van.
Come into my. No, that's not like that, John. That's not.
That's the costume. What's your costume, or I like your cosplay, is a tactic of mine. And you're right, it does work. Sometimes I still don't know if that guy was dressed as James Bond or John Bashir from Deep Space Nine, dressed as
James Bond.
I generally saw a guy wearing a really fly tuxedo at a convention. He looked really smart, and so I asked him what his cosplay was, and genuinely 20. You can actually see Andrew and Colin and Dave back away and leave me with him. 20 minutes. This guy. By the end of it, he was giving me Deep Space Nine quotes. He was telling me about
By the end of it, he bought his costume.
I had there was more chance of me buying a tuxedo than him buying a comic off my table. Yeah, it was like 20 minutes. Where's you? So that's we'll chat a wee bit more about Pioneers and that we will. Stu's sitting quietly and conveniently, and will we move on to our sort of geekery and bring Stu in? Does that sound all right?
No. Leave him. Leave him to Stu. Oh, come on.
Yeah, sorry.
I've been sitting getting pissed in the green room.
Sorry, I imagine I'll look at you and imagine that you were just like practicing with your banjo or something like that, Stu.
What's happening?
How's it going? You right?
Yeah, doing good.
How's everyone's week?
Yeah, some
been?
kind of
like what?
beverage.
This is
Sorry,
what
I was
happens.
going to use beer.
We're going to have to do a
Yeah.
hand signal or something like that.
Yeah, there's five of us now.
Who's next?
What are you drinking, Stu?
Beer.
Icarus from Otherworld Brewing.
It's a good gimmick.
Yeah.
Peter.
Beer. I got a beer.
You
I
got
got a beer. I went out with a friend the other day. We went to a place in Chelmsford, which is in Essex, where I live, called Radio City. And I didn't know they brew their own beer.
Nice.
And it's a gorgeous can. It's got like a matte feel. It's like a piece of art on the front. I'm a little scared to drink it because I don't know if you can see on there. It's 8%. It's a double IPA. It's an 8% double IPA. And
Good starter beer.
And it's really nice. It's really, really lovely. And it's a great. Should anyone ever be in Essex, remind me to take you there because it's a lovely place and they were really super people. And they had loads of stuff on tap, including a gluten-free beer, which I didn't know was a thing. I tried that, and they gave me this. Gave me this can. They gave me this can for free on grounds that I would, because I told them what I was doing this week. And yeah, so that's really cool.
We're happy to promote their beer. We're happy to throw something up on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Radio City Beer Works, they're called, and really, really lovely people.
I don't know. I don't know much about Chelmsford. I think that the extent of my knowledge about that is I think Phil Pope and Rory McGrath about 20 years ago did a TV show. Just off the back of it, they'd just done Who Dares Wins, and it was their first. And I loved them. I loved that whole thing. And they did that. Was it set in the Roman area or something like that?
It was Roman occupation. I think
Roman
it was. They do say Chelmsford. I could be completely wrong. Someone please correct me. I am on the internet after all. I believe it was the capital city of England at some point when the Romans sort of set up camp here. Chelmsford was briefly our capital city.
Possibly. Was it called like Camulodunum or something like that at the time?
Yeah. But it's a nice town. I do like it. It's one of my favourite places around here. Yeah, nice. I was actually born in Essex myself. My dad was in the RAF. I was born in a place called Stamford. I don't think I've ever been back there since. But there's a couple of Stamfords around. Stamford Le Hope. Don't know.
Whichever one is closest to an RAF base.
I'll have a think. I'll let you know.
Would be the one.
But yeah, it's a nice place. It's a nice place to come from. I'm very proud of it.
Amazing.
Essex stories. Jeff.
How's your beer, Stu, as well? How's Icarus?
It's surprisingly tart. It is described as a Nelson and Gooseberry hazy pale ale. So when I took a swig of it, I was like, oh, this wasn't what I was expecting. But reading the back, it's described as a tart and hoppy pale ale, dry hopped with Nelson Sauvin with white grape flavours. So.
I don't understand why you didn't just put vodka and Ribena.
I would have to buy vodka and Ribena then.
Beer. Every beer that I have tastes like beer.
I did start off like when I got into the green room earlier. I did start with this to begin with, but whilst this beer looks awesome, it just tastes crap. Yeah, that's the only bonus. It's a nice can, but that's it.
Not a very good beer, was it not?
No, it was a bit rubbish. I just felt kind of too watered down, and that was like a 6% double dry hopped IPA. But
I think if I said this at the time, I was thinking, but we talked about watered down beer. Last time I was on, I had quite a nice Stormtrooper porter.
Oh yeah.
Stormtrooper stout, so much flavour in it. It was brilliant. I only had one can yet because it had been in a box. So I thought I'll follow it up with what is always a good beer, which is a Guinness. and I drank the Guinness, and it just felt like I was drinking water after.
Yeah.
You realise how good small batch, proper porters, proper stouts, and things
Yes.
like that are, and how much flavour there is in them, and IPAs, because most people in this country are just used to drinking mass-produced lager or fizzy stuff and stuff like this.
Even going to like mass-produced IPA, like having a decent, like my standard IPAs in the pub is probably Ennis and Gun in Dunfermline. There's a couple of places starting to do IPAs on tap, and it does tend to be Ennis and Gun. It's not like, unless you're up in the commercial, obviously, it's not anything overly adventurous, but certainly there has been a few times. Like I was at a gig last night and had a couple of nice IPAs on the way up to the Royal Mile, and then when I got to the castle, it was the Ennis and Gun IPA was one of the beers they had on tap there, and it was like, oh, you can totally tell the difference between a small batch IPA and a mass produced one. Even at like a quality beer, like. Right,
I would say I do along at the hill end. The one that they have there is the Level Head, which is it's a Green King IPA, really really nice. But Green King are a big, they're like a massive company, aren't they? They own.
Yeah, they're a pub chain, aren't they? Yeah, they're a pub chain.
But the Level Head IPA is really really nice.
They have about 7 Kings in the Fairland.
I think just most big companies didn't. They just mass produce for.
Nice. For Pierce, we've got a wee private chat. Pierce just put the Radio City website address. I'll put it in the comments for anybody who wants to check out. It's always nice to check out a new brewery. What have folk been doing in terms of what folk been doing geek wise? I've had one of those where I always just total geek out on my first couple of weeks of the summer holidays. So my list is quite substantial, but I wanted to hear what other people were up to.
I've not been watching an awful lot. There's been a few bits and bobs out. I'm still trying to finish Sandman. I've become hugely excited. Everybody knows that I'm a massive fan of the Umbrella Academy, and I didn't think it was possible for my excitement for season 4 to reach new boundaries until the last trailer dropped this week, and I realised that Nick Offerman is in season 4, and I'm just like, it's just like my favourite guy in my favourite show. Just like, here we go.
Amazing.
Do we know if he's a goodie or a baddie?
From the trailer, I think he's not on the side of good. I think he's something like that, but it's kind of left a wee bit open. It's like the best character in it, and I'm very, very dreadful news, but the best character in it is Diego's girlfriend. Who came in on season 2 or something like that and starts off as a baddie and stuff like this, but she was so good that they just brought her in and kept her through season 3, and she's absolutely phenomenal. That's embarrassing that I can't remember.
The Umbrella Academy is built like that anyway, isn't it? Like I've only seen season 1, but my favorite characters in season 1 were the assassins, the ones that were out to
Hazel and Cha-Cha.
Yeah, and they were antagonists. I think. Yeah. For the Umbrella Academy, in particular, I can imagine you could bring Nick Offerman in as a goodie or a baddie, and it doesn't actually matter because you'll still be absolute. Because even the antagonists are funny in the Umbrella Academy. They're
yeah. It's Lila I'm talking about. I can remember her name though. She's the thing. But the Umbrella Academy is one of these very few ones that's 4's got a lot to live up to, because in my opinion, the show's gotten better season by season. Season 1 to season 2. Season 2 was phenomenal. Season 3 blew my mind. It's just, it gets better and better and better. So they've got a lot to live up to in a finale season. And if they can land it, it's going to be one of those shows that people are going to be rewatching for decades to come. It's not going to be like Lost, that everyone watches the finale and then it's just like it just disappears, or Game of Thrones.
It was exactly what we all guessed it was in episode 1.
Yeah.
The ongoing annoying thing about the Lost was we've had this conversation before, we all guessed it. Like, we were sort of promised that it was going to be the most mind-blowing finale, and then we're like, is it this? And they're like, no, it's better. And then it was exactly that, and you're like, well, it was purgatory. Fucking liar.
They've written themselves in that corner right at the start. They're like, we'll make it purgatory and nobody will ever guess it. not knowing that the internet at that time, the burgeoning internet, everybody was guessing it, and everyone was like, "It's like this."
Yeah.
You've got to avoid the internet when really, really good shows come. Otherwise they'll be spoiled. Who among us managed to avoid the internet during the first season of Westworld? And anybody watch Westworld? Yeah,
I haven't seen Westworld yet, and I've managed to avoid all spoilers. So
all right.
I haven't seen it yet either.
Okay, well, there's a character
I have
who's
managed to
also
avoid
another character in it, and they're the same character. And
Oh,
it's
good for
only
that.
They Fight Club that.
that's
and it's
Fight
only
Club, you
the
jobby.
but it was amazing, and it was great.
Fight got spoiled for me. Fight Club got spoiled for me by my girlfriend, now my wife.
Fight Club?
We hired at the video shop back in Fight Club. I hired Fight Club at the video shop, and I wasn't in the mood for it. She watched it, and the next day she went, "Can you believe they're the same guy?" I was like, "God damn it!"
That's like
Ruined.
that's the whole point of Fight Club. You're either in the there's two people and there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people that know and there's those that don't. And it's just like I watched it with Sean last year and paused it in the scene where Tyler and the narrator are sitting in the hotel, and I think the narrator wakes up from another bout of it's like insomnia, like sleep breaks, and he wakes up, and I actually paused it. I was like, "Right, Sean, you're actually going to join a very exclusive club in the next minute. Are you ready?" And he was like, "For what?" And I'm like, "Okay." The press play, and I was like, "You're
going to go start a fight with
with
someone.
Yeah. They started a Fight Club. No, but after it was after he see that, I was like, "You're now somebody that know." It's the same as the usual suspects. It's the folk that know.
The Kaiser Soze moment. It's just
Yeah.
And those are, those two are two phenomenal movies. Like, just great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm working my way through a pile of stuff. I finally watched Gen V before I could watch a new season of The Boys. Gen V was fantastic. I thought it was just going to be like a filler show that you maybe had to watch a little bit of before you got to understand The Boys. I'm actually finding Gen V better than The Boys season 4, so that was pretty good. I watched Axel F at the beginning of the week there, Beverly Hills Cop 4. That was a lot of fun. 90s Show season 2 dropped on Netflix a couple of weeks ago. I'm a big fan of that 70s show. So
I totally didn't realize. I didn't get
that 90s Show season, it's billed as that 90s Show Part 2. So they've dropped 8 episodes a couple of weeks ago, and then they're dropping another 8 in October. And they've got a lot of good guest stars and whatnot. So I don't want to spoil you, Jeff, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, I need to watch it.
And then I'm rewatching Cobra Kai, the new season coming out next week.
Yeah,
it's a part 1 as well, isn't it? Am I right thinking Cobra Kai? It's like Cobra Kai season 6.
Part 1 of 3. Part 1 of 3. It's going to be 3 5-episode mini-seasons.
Yes, dude.
It's fucking stupid.
It's what Netflix do now. It's so that people keep it. Too many people were getting Netflix just for the one show, or they'll take a 30-day trial and then binge Cobra Kai, or Bridgerton was the more recent one. But no, if we put 5 episodes and then there's a gap of 5 weeks and then we do the next 5 episodes, they know you're getting at least one payment out of you. So
plus, you also you continue the interest as well, because obviously a lot of shows are done weekly. And you're getting that water cooler moment in the call where people are like, "Oh, did you see such and such last night?" So obviously Netflix and all that drop a lot of seasons at once.
Yeah.
And that's the appeal of Netflix. So I think staggering it it remains in the public conscience a lot more. I think that's why they kind of do it. And I think they're still filming it as well, to be honest. But it's just finished filming. As well as the new Karate movie is just finished filming as well.
The new what movie?
So, a Karate Kid movie. There's a new Karate Kid movie being filmed with Jackie Chan Jackie Chan back.
It's not connected to Cobra Kai at all, though, is it? It's like
apparently not, but it's Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan together, so that's weird.
Ralph Macchio's in it.
They'll have to be connected on by.
See, this is Ralph Macchio's in it, but it's no connected to Cobra Kai. It's going to be like the Star Wars expanded universe all over again. isn't it? It's
Yeah, a bit weird. Yeah. So I don't know how it's going to work, but Ralph Macchio's definitely involved in the film. Yeah. So
I assumed that
goes.
we were going to get something in because the next season of Karate Kid is not Karate Kid. The next season of Cobra Kai is that international tournament, isn't it? That's like the big.
Yeah.
That's the big.
Yeah.
That's the. So I assumed that was a plot device so that they could have Jackie Chan, and I assumed that was going to happen. I assumed that he would represent one of their dojos.
It's also season 6, isn't it? Cobra Kai.
Yeah, it's the last one.
What's it going to be, John? 6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie, pretty much, yeah. The Kimi movie has been written. And Joe McHale's schedule is holding up the filming of the movie. Everyone assumed it was Donald Glover's schedule, but apparently Joe McHale has put his hand to bed. It's my schedule holding up.
Joe McHale, as far as I'm aware, hasn't done anything for about 5 years. I don't know how is Joe McHale?
He's in the Bear.
He's in what?
He's in the Bear.
I guess. What is he?
No, he's not a big guy. He's maybe in a grand total of 5 minutes, but he does play a pivotal role.
Gambino is like one of the biggest stars in the world. Movies, TV shows, music. He's the new Madonna, isn't he?
Yeah.
John McHale is Jeff.
Yeah, he's the horrible. Yeah.
He popped up on a trailer for something I saw this afternoon. Something about animals, like they were not dog catchers, but like people.
Oh yeah,
go around.
He's got a new show. He works for a council department.
Yeah.
Thing animals, yeah. You can find that.
Animals, things like that. Alligators stuck in your drains and stuff like that. Maybe it's that's holding him up. But
it's very much like a Parks and Recreation type thing. It's like a workplace where I know people and stuff like this, and he's sort of the best known of them. Yeah. I don't know, Joe McHale. I'm glad they're thinking it. I'm glad it's been written. I'm glad it's getting into there are movies that you hear that the script's ready and they're going to start filming and you think, yay! And then there's Highlander, when you're like, just leave it alone. I don't care who you are. Just don't do it. Leave it alone.
What about Constantine?
You just want Christopher Lambert to show up a shotgun and go like, it's my fault. I'll deal with it. It's like, I'm sorry, guys.
Sorry, what did you say, Peter?
I'm saying that the one I heard about recently is that they look like the Constantine or a sequel to Constantine looks like it's slightly more likely to happen than ever before.
But as fans of IP, do you not think most Constantine fans, everybody loves Keanu Reeves, but it wasn't a very good movie. As fans of Constantine, I want to see more of. Was it Matt Ryan?
Right, yeah.
The TV show Constantine, because that was phenomenal. That was great, and that was his actual.
I'd like to see some more of the Sandman Constantine. Have you seen Constantine and Sandman yet? It is indeed. General Louise Coleman. Good times.
Oh yes, they made it Louise Coleman, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was Joanna Constantine. Yeah.
So much you can do. Marvelous.
Sandman's coming back, isn't it? I know they did Dead Boy Detective, and it was sort of connected, but
yeah.
Seen some clips.
Do you think they'll manage to keep it going with what's been happening with Neil Gaiman? Do you think they'll be able to separate?
I'm not aware. Like I heard, as far all I've heard is like Neil Gaiman's now a wrong'un. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. Neil Gaiman's a great writer. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what he said. I hope it's not something too heinous.
It's awful, but it's you should go like it is awful. I'm not going to say it's awful, but it's awful. But it's one of those. It's just not nice, and I don't want to comment on it. But
is it awful if it's true, or is it definitely true?
That's the question.
It's alleged.
That's the question. There's been no convictions. There's been no convictions or stuff. It's just not very nice what's happened. Not very nice at all. But it comes back. We've had this conversation quite a few times on the show about are you able to separate art from artist at that point? Because I would be like,
I think your general Netflix watcher doesn't know who Yin is. They just watch the Sandman because they went, "Oh, that's cool," and they watch that. So I think maybe the comic side audience know about this thing, maybe might give it a bypass. But yeah, your general Netflix was no idea.
I suppose that's a good point. What have Stu? What have you been up to? You've had your kids off, so it's like
Yeah.
Old Despicable Me and Toy Story for the last couple of weeks.
We've got that coming up. We've been on holiday for a week. Came back early from holiday because we all got sick. So the last week is kind of like, yeah, we're back to work, but we're still not well. But yeah, I mean, I've watched Furiosa when we got back, and it was like really, really good. Like I kind of knew nothing about it other than seeing like Fury Road. It was like, let's try this. Rented it, and like me and my wife were invested. We were watching it with another couple. They weren't as invested. We kind of just tuned them out and just focused on the movie, and like we were gripped. It was like 2.5 hours, and Chris Hemsworth wearing a silly prosthetic nose, but still, it was really, really good. And as soon as it kind of finished, when we got back, I got a copy of Fury Road. Like, this is like the sequel. Let's slap this on. So we watched that the other night. Still a hugely entertaining movie. So, yeah, like definitely. Like I did have some hesitations about watching Furiosa, just in the sense like, do we need to know more about this character? Is their backstory going to be this interesting? But thoroughly entertaining action film.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
I've not seen it yet. It's on my list, but I've not seen it. But I have heard good things. Not doing very well, from what I can understand. Like, in terms of like, in terms of like the cinema. But I had quite a long conversation this week about whether cinema was maybe starting to die off a wee bit or whatever. But it does seem like, unless it's tentpole, like the new Despicable Me film will smash $1 billion probably. unless it's like a total tentpole movie. Like films in general are just struggling now. Like it's not the cash spinner, at least not in the cinema that it used to be. You know,
you talk about tempo. They're not taking chances anymore. I mean, Despicable Me 5 or whatever it is now, isn't doing anything that Despicable Me didn't do. Fast and the Furious and things like this. They're no. We talked earlier on there like about great movies. Usual Suspects and Fight Club and stuff like that. Fundamentally, I'm not convinced these movies would get made now because they wouldn't make enough money.
Yeah.
What they wouldn't go to cinema. Yeah, they wouldn't go to the cinema. I think they would just go to streaming. I mean, at the case in point, Beverly Hills Cop 4, that's a left, straight to Netflix. Yeah. Who would have thought? Weird.
But are they still making the good films? If streaming was picking them up, they would still make them. I'm kind of with you, Andrew. I'm not sure that they're getting made now because the committee decisions that make up what Netflix is going to fund is maybe a different scale, but it's the same situation as with cinema. I mean, I kind of watched the Eddie Murphy thing at the weekend, and I kind of thought he deserved that sequel. He'd done enough work in the first 2 films that he deserved a decent send off. But it's not exactly something that people are going to spend a lot of time reviewing or watching a second time, is it? I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought, yeah, you've earned that. You've earned my 2 hours for that. But yeah, I agree with you. Where are the films coming from? Where are they coming from?
When was the last time you've seen a film that truly pushed boundaries like either of those two ones that I've talked about? The last film that people possibly what was the one last Jordan Peele.
Nope.
As a filmmaker, he's the guy who Get Out and
Get Out.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah. He's still doing it, but that's one guy maybe who's still kind of trying to push the boundaries and stuff like this.
I feel Christopher Nolan is still good at that. Even though it's like 50-50 nowadays, but still, I feel his films are worth seeing in a cinema.
They're good looking, but there's no surprise since probably,
Inception.
Inception, yeah. There's no surprise now to a Christopher Nolan movie. You know what you're going to get as well. There's no.
You're right. He does maintain something of that sort of what they call it auteur kind of thing. You know, they're his films. If they're good, they're his. If they're bad, they're his. They don't feel like they've been written by a desk full of people. I did do the Barbie and the Oppenheimer thing. I thought the Oppenheimer was pretty dull biopic. It didn't land for me. I didn't learn it. I've read a few books about that. I have an interest in that. Funnily enough, I nearly wrote nuclear fusion into Ren. If you remember my first comic series, that very nearly got involved in that, but I didn't go there. So it's something I've read a little bit about, and I didn't learn anything particularly new there, and it didn't stir me like I thought it was going to. But I thought the Barbie film was quite ingenious. For that to be allowed to be made by people who own that IP. That's a company. Again, I have no idea how big Mattel are, but they did seem to be taking a bit of a risk with their character and their IP with that. I applauded that. Not everyone's cup of tea, of course, but I quite enjoyed it.
There's a film that got released a couple of years ago that took a risk with the IP. I don't know if you guys ever remember the Banana Splits on TV. Do you remember the Banana Splits? Yeah. They made a Banana Splits movie, which is basically Friday Night Freddy's. The creatures become electronics and they go on a murderous rampage. And it's actually the proper Banana Splits made by Warner Bros. Who own the IP for the TV show. So if you ever watch a Banana Splits movie, seriously, it's bonkers. And that's when I watched Barbie. I was like, oh yeah, they're taking chances like they did with the Banana Splits movie. So it's definitely,
It's one of those bizarre things. I think I seen the Banana Splits when I was younger, but I just kind of, even when I was in sort of 15, 20, I thought I'd made it up. I thought I'd watched the Monkeys when I was on acid or something like that. And that's how I remember the Banana Splits.
Remember the theme tune? It was the na 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 na. That was the theme tune.
Yeah, Kick-Ass, didn't they? Which was
yeah. So obviously, check your movie. It is basically, Five Nights at Freddy's before that film ever got made. What was the Nick Cage one? Wally's Wonderworld or Willy's Wonderland, something like that, where the animatronics come to life as well. So that's another 3 films, very similar. But the Banana Splits, the fact it was a famous IP made by the people who owned the IP was just crazy to me.
But yeah, I do despair. Like these days, it's like Peter said, they're getting made by committees who are balancing how much they think it can make before a movie even gets made. TV shows are getting cancelled after one season. TV shows are getting cancelled before a season has even been aired.
Swamp Thing got cancelled after an episode of it.
Yeah,
on Amazon Prime, and yet it was a good TV show. I enjoyed it.
But you remember the recent TV show that Amazon did about Nemo? The 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, because that didn't get aired at all. Either Amazon or Apple didn't get aired at all. They took the tax write-off on it instead. Similar with Batgirl, it made more financial sense for them not to show it and take a write-off. And this is people's work. This is work that people have worked on for a year. Actors and cinematographers and directors and writers.
No, that is crazy to me, and the fact that we've got a Michael Keaton Batman movie sitting in a basement somewhere. That's friggin' mental.
And it's not like the Snyder Cut. There's no amount of pressure that's going to make them put that movie out because the tax break that they got for burying it was too big. Yeah. And if it was ever released, they have to pay back that tax break.
Talk about the Snyder Cut. I read about this week that I was like, oh, apparently there. You guys probably knew about this, and I'm just really, really late to the party. But there is a Schumacher cut out there of Batman Forever, and
Kevin Smith screened it a year ago. Kevin Smith screened it, one of his
Apparently it's amazing. Apparently it's really good. It adds 30 minutes. It was funny because I was having a conversation about Batman Forever. It's the whole idea that he has that romance with Nicole Kidman, and she says she's like a psychotherapist, isn't she? She's and they don't lead into his neuroses around about his parents in that film hardly at all. Yeah. Then you're but apparently there was a whole 30-minute subplot that Schumacher filmed about about that, because actually when you watch Batman Forever with all those bits cut, it just looks like she's nuts. It looks like Nicole Kidman's character is barmy, and you're like, actually, would you ever trust her to be your psychiatrist? She's like crazy.
It's funny you mention that, because I have in my hand the novelization of Batman Forever, which has all the deleted scenes in the book.
Oh wow!
It's based on the early version of the. It's based on the early version of the script.
Yeah, I'll need to get that off you, man.
So obviously these things are produced. These things are produced ages in advance to obviously come out with the movie. So there was a comic book adaptation as well that has some of the deleted scenes. And I think the trailer has some of the deleted scenes as well, to be honest.
And the YouTube music video does as well. There's bits in the
So I'd like to see that, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to see that. I'm interested in seeing how something ends up different. Like for instance, a couple of years back there was 2 Exorcist movies. Paul Schrader made one from a Taxi Driver, and the studio didn't like it. They thought it was boring, so they got Rennie Harlan, Die Hard 2 director. He came in and directed one, and they both starred Stellan Skarsgård as the priest, as Father Mer, and then they ended up releasing both of them. So there's 2 different Exorcist films starring the same actor in the same role, made by 2 different people, but released by the same studio. Crazy. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'd like to check that book out.
So I think it was Exorcist the beginning, and then Exorcist Dominion. Yeah, so they're both prequels to the original Exorcist, and one is kind of slow and wondrous, and the other one is jump scare stuff. So I think the jump scare was the one that was released in the cinema.
The plots aren't connected, John.
They're 2 different movies entirely, but they both feature Stellan Skarsgård. Yeah, it's like they saw the trailer one and went, "No, we're not having that one," and then got Rennie Harlan to come in and make a different version of the film. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy. What have you been watching this week, Stu? What's been? Well, we have that. I asked you, and then we started talking about the Schumacher cut. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. So movies was Furiosa. TV, we just binge watched The Bear. So we're now left. What was it, the last shot? Was that to be continued? So
I was you and me talk about The Bear a lot on this show. I fucking love The Bear too. It was season 2 in particular was the absolute fucking shit. It was the best. Mm-hmm. Season 3, all right, is basically all. I find there was 2 plot threads coming out of season 2 that I wanted resolved, and then felt like they were deliberately not resolving them to make us watch more. I was like, no, that should be resolved by now. Why are we 10 episodes into a season and not resolved your season before's cliffhangers in any meaningful way? That really that annoyed me a lot.
I forgot about them. It's going to become the new heroes.
No, they referenced them a lot, but they just didn't resolve them. They were just ongoing issues in the next season, rather than coming to a head in any meaningful way. It was just frustrating as fuck.
I didn't get it.
I probably realised
people rave about it. It seems like a melange of good ideas, but there's no enough in there to make a show for me, and it's just set pieces. It's just that could be a sketch show or something like that. Every week they're away somewhere else with new people and different people. Yeah. I'm away to Amsterdam for the week to learn to be a sous chef or something like that. We're going to introduce this character just for one episode. And it's going to be somebody famous because that's what's keeping it going. But
they did that a wee bit again this season. They had John. In fairness, they had John Cena showed up as another cousin, and that was quite that was very funny and very well done. But you're right. You're right to an extent. Also, they had Joe McHale. Is it Joe McHale? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. He and I actually found one of the ongoing plot points is that he was he gave the main character Carm total PTSD and trauma related.
He was in the first season, wasn't he? He was the chef that Cam worked with.
Yeah.
He was horrible to Carm, yeah.
He was a bit part character in season 1 and then came back in a later season. So fundamentally, the Bear's very similar to Stargirl.
Mm-hmm.
That Joe McHale did one episode in one season and stuff like this, and then came back later.
He shows up in season 3, and Carm tries to resolve the issue that's obviously been plaguing him for quite a large portion of his life. Like he addresses, like, look, fuck you. Like, I've been wanting to talk to you for years about how you made me feel, about how my life done. And then, but it was quite good. It was that whole thing that, like, you know, that when you have an argument with somebody and then you're like, days later, you're like, oh, I wish I'd said that. I wish I'd said this. It was kind of that situation for him. And when he finally got around to actually being able to have that face-to-face that he's always dreamed of kind of having for his own peace of mind, it wasn't what he thought it would, you know, the situation wasn't what it was going to be. And it was quite disappointing.
For me, again, see, I didn't really get the show. I think part of it is I've worked in kitchens, and it's like, I know what that sort of situation is. One part of me is because I look at it and it's relatable. If you're a chef, it's really relatable. I'll be honest with you, that could have been the biopic where Joe McHale's character is a guy called Marco Pierre White, and Carm is Gordon Ramsay, because that was the kind of thing. If you've seen the shows they've made over the years, that was that thing. And there's another chef who does MasterChef, who's a guy who'd be a fair whose name I remember. But he always talks about Gordon Ramsay as being that guy that just totally focused when it's on and things like this. And that's what that show always reminds me of. But I didn't see the drama in it. Just didn't. You told me season 1. You told me it was this year's Ted Lasso.
I stand by that. Mm-hmm. Season 2 was amazing. Season 3, I don't know if you agree, Stu. Season 3,
it's
all right.
Almost season 2.5.
Yeah,
like we've just got more of the same. We're not really any further forward. Yeah. We've got some other characters, backstories, which was good and appreciated. But yeah, I think the general conception is I was kind of feeling bloated. It was 10 episodes. I can't remember if the first 2 seasons were 10 or 8 episodes. But no, it was good. Yeah. But I could see where the complaints have come from. It's a little bit more of the same.
The stage where you're like, it was good, but it's like people when people used to talk to me about The Walking Dead, and I was like, and I watched a season, and I was like, really? And they're like, no, see season 4, it gets absolutely brilliant. I'm like, there's so much good TV out there that you want me to sit through 3 seasons of mediocre to get to really, really good. And it's like shows can spend a bit of time building up a character. I'm not like, and that's why Netflix will not make season 2 of these things. But if you look back at season 1 of Sons of Anarchy, for instance, that was all about introducing the characters and establishing storylines and things like this, and nothing really happened. But it set up everything for 6 seasons of absolute genius.
Yeah.
You want to talk?
Yeah, I was going to say I've not seen the bet, so I'm not passing any comment on the bet. But I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and we just watched on Apple TV Sugar. I don't know if you've seen it. Happy to talk about
Colin Farrell, isn't it? Yeah,
Colin Farrell. It was very watchable, but at the end of it, not that I didn't enjoy it, but it seemed to be they've made a TV series for the main purpose of selling season 2. And I think too many shows now, the hook or the tag or whatever you want to call it, they lose that. I don't mind a tag or a hook for season 2, but when you realise 3 episodes in that all they're doing is trying to buy another series or trying to get another series, that feels wrong to me.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, I totally agree. The worst ones that I think that ever did that was when they did the American version of The Killing, based on the sort of thing version. And at the end of season 1, you didn't find out, like the Danish one had a resolution after season 1, but they made that season last 8 episodes into season 2 before they resolved it and then started a new investigation. Right. And that felt cheap to me. That felt like cheating. You know, it's like you watch a season. I watch a lot of subtitled stuff, a lot of Scandinavian stuff and stuff like this, and it's really good. It's just getting everything into 10 episodes with loads of background pictures of mountains and snow and things like this. And I love that sort of shit. And they did really well. I love everybody that was in The Killing. The version it was Joel Kinnaman, who I think is good in just about everything he does, but it still felt a wee bit cheaty.
That was basically my review of it, and I'll get pelters for this later on. But that was my experience watching Dune. I felt like Dune Part 1 was setting up Dune Part 2. And then that Zack Snyder film that came out, that Rebel Moon, I felt was kind of similar as well. I thought Rebel Moon Part 1 was setting up Part 2 rather than telling its own story.
I think Dune, you can away with it. Dune's a book with a story with a full thing. And it is like half and half. That's just how it is. Rebel Moon I thought was all right.
I felt that about Dune because obviously I'm old enough to have enjoyed the not the Jodorowsky one, what never got made, but the David Lynch one.
Yeah.
Because that did the complete arc, and I don't know the books well enough to know where they stopped in that. But by the new ones making half of that film, I literally came away and said they've just made half a film. It didn't even feel very different to the David Lynch one to me, but they just made half of it. So it's like, well, I know it can be done in 2 hours or 2.5 hours. So what happened there? And I did feel a bit. I haven't seen Part 2 yet, but I.
That's good. That's really good.
I'll watch it. But, yeah,
I think
speaking of Rebel Moon,
Lynch one it did compress a lot of what happens in the second part. So yeah, it was up until a certain point it was very similar. Did any Villeneuve one? I've not seen Part 2 yet. I'll be honest, but I am looking forward to it.
It's good. I enjoyed it. John, Rebel Moon.
Rebel Moon, the uncut director's version is coming to Netflix soon. The 3-hour version of Vertigo. The Snyder cut of his own Snyder cut is coming onto Netflix with added swearing. So look at that. So if you thought the first one was long enough, crap enough, which I did, hold to your hats is a 3-hour version. So
I didn't think it was bad, John. I didn't think it was bad at all. The second one had probably an hour of unnecessary, meetings and talking about things.
Yeah.
Does anyone
the beginning was ridiculous, yeah.
Sorry. Does anyone remember Battle Beyond the Stars?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
John Boy Walton and you talked about Stellan Skarsgård there earlier on about Stellan Skarsgård playing basically the same character.
So Rebel Moon was
Robert Vaughn, yeah.
With director of photography Zack Snyder, right? I've got to be honest, I didn't enjoy it. He makes a beautiful scene, but as a storyteller, someone needs to take that pen off him, in my opinion, and give it to someone else.
For years, he's been trying to make a Kurosawa movie. He wants to make Seven Samurai or something like that, or Sergio Leone or something like that. You can see where his influences are. And
it was a Star Wars movie.
I liked a lot of his movies. I liked Watchmen. I liked what was the one movie called? The Sucker Punch.
300 was already.
Both properties written by somebody else, to be fair.
Yes.
He's the director of photography and makes stunningly beautiful films. But take the pen away. Okay. What we were talking about at the start, right? Maybe that's someone who would benefit from collaboration of someone who goes, no, that's not how you tell a story.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But it was very obvious that I think he pitched that as a Star Wars movie.
Yes.
And
it was his Star Wars.
Just like, well, I'm going to make it anyway.
It was.
I'm going to have lightsabers, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have Wookiees, and I'm going to have this. There's nothing you can do.
I want to see the script where he's pen through lines and be like, and then Luke does this, actually, and then he's kind of like, Luke and Charlie Hubbard.
Yeah, exactly.
But by the way, I thought as something that you can watch on a Saturday night, have a couple of beers and just chill. I actually didn't mind them. I thought they were all right. I thought once they get past the sort of boring bit and get to the action sequences, they look very good. And like you say, very good at doing action sequences. But yeah. We'll see what he does next. I'm not enthused. Like if he doesn't end up making a follow up to that, I know that they left on, the princess is alive, and he's trying to set up a new universe and stuff like this. I could take it or leave it. I would watch it maybe if it came out. I wouldn't look for it, but
I'll end up, even though shit, I'll end up watching it just to see what happens. But,
but there's very, like you talked earlier on there about you watched that show on Sugar on Apple TV. Apple TV's got some great stuff at the moment. They've got a show called Severance. That's great, absolutely great. Season 2 of that's coming very soon. I noticed that a trailer dropped for that as well.
I understand they're filming season 2 of Silo.
Silo, yeah, that's
yeah, was pretty good.
Really,
I cited that in my. If you like things like Silo and Wool and and the books, you might like Pioneers. So there's some references to it in there, and I thought they did that really well.
Yeah, that's a Hugh Howey or something like that.
Yeah.
The book was that. I think I read that book many years ago.
You're a Bond villain. Jenna a Bond villain all of a sudden. Like he's cat. Hello, Mr. Bond.
She's been beyond at my feet for about half an hour, so I lifted her up. She's purring really
You think Peter, it reminded me more of The Expanse, which again, the book series and the TV series, I absolutely love both of them. And that had that, it borrowed a lot from Alien. In the first couple of seasons, the monster in space and things like this, but really well done. I'll buy that. Vampires in space, I'll buy that any day of the week. I'll get on there. Don't worry.
You'll love it.
I picked up loads of stuff this week, but I'm looking at our time. So what I'm going to, I will put a video together of all of my geek week. I'll just put it on YouTube for anyone that gives a shit. I'll just look clock in the time. I will say I did watch. I was in a travel lodge with my boys, and we didn't have access to Netflix or that, so like sit and watching, trying to flip through the channels on a Sunday night, trying to find a movie. We watched Rocky 2. How good's Rocky 2? I totally forgot how good Rocky 2 is. Like, great. And what I quite liked about it was because I was like, "Oh, Rocky 2's on," and Sean was like, "I've not seen any Rocky films," and I was like, "That's fine. Like, you'll get it quite quickly." It's I think I was like, "You'll go back. You can go back and watch Rocky 1 and really enjoy it." I was like, because it is an amazing film in itself. I was like, but there's like a standalone aspect to the Rocky films where you can kind of just go, he's a boxer, he's got some sort of insane concussion based things because he going on, and he loves his wife, and he's an underdog, and you can kind of just go with that and still have a really good time. So
these are movies I love all the Rocky movies, but you can see every movie, like Sylvester Stallone. We talked about guys who didn't change their style over years, but Sylvester Stallone was reacting at every stage of his career. So Rocky was a 1970s movie when they were making Taxi Driver and things like this. It's really great.
Totally.
Rocky 2 was sort of in a similar vein, but by the time you get to Rocky 3, you're training montages and things like this, and then Cold War era Rocky 4.
Did you see the recent re-release of Rocky 4?
I haven't watched it, but yeah.
Go find it. I can't remember where I found it now, but Stallone said it was not quite the film that he intended to make, and they even made a documentary about him recutting it. And he said when you watch the original, and the new one is not that different, but it is really, and you've kind of forgotten how good it was. And he said the only problem with watching Rocky 4, it was a 90-minute MTV video. Yeah. The whole thing, like a montage. And this one,
we need a montage.
A montage. Yeah. They slightly tweaked it to make it a bit less like that, and it made a bloody good movie. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the documentary as well. It was cool.
Movie.
Yeah, they got rid of Polly's sex robot.
Montages and stuff like this. Rocky 4.
They better not have got rid of Polly's sex robot.
Yep, Psycho's gone.
Then 5, he went back to his roots. 5, he tried to do a sort of drama again. They had no money, they were living. He was living.
The sex robot.
Sex robot. There wasn't a sex robot. I mean, you're thinking of something else he saw.
No, it's fucking
Oh no! I saw Polly's intentions with that robot.
You're thinking of Cocky.
Well, the robot shows up and it's like "Happy Birthday, Polly," and it's like, and then by the time like Rocky goes to Russia to fight Ivan Drago. Polly wants to go with him just to get away from his overbearing
Yeah,
central.
the robot's like a battered wife at this point.
It's like, Polly, where are you going?
God.
And he's just like, stop busting my cups. And it's like, did they cut the robot out of the recut?
I think so. I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty sure that's what didn't make it.
They trimmed it to the point that it wasn't quite as bizarre as it was in the original.
I love that robot, man.
It's just to sell toys.
What
It's
Andrew was
just
saying,
that
it's like,
sell toys.
it escalates to an 80s. It escalates to like. What I like about the Rocky movies, exactly what you just said, Andrew. It's like they're quite reflective of the years they were made in. So
Yeah.
like
Up to
Rocky
Creed
1.
recently, they've adapted again for the 21st century in Creed. Yeah,
It's like the Rocky 3 feels very much like the birth of pro wrestling, at like the WWF, the Hulk Hogan obviously is in it. Your Mr. T and your like sports entertainment aspect of boxing.
Larger than life characters.
And like melodramatic, and then
his trainer gets killed and stuff like this, and it's just like it was 2 years after John Voight's the Champ was out and stuff like this. It was like all of somebody dying and things like. You can see Sylvester Stallone because he wrote most of them. He wrote the first one and I think the second, and then he was involved in the writing, the rest of them. And you can see he's reacting to what's popular at the time, which is fair enough. He wants people to watch his movies, and they're very good. But yeah,
But you clearly watched Short Circuit before writing the fourth one.
yeah. They basically it's like, we can sell these, we can do this, we can do that. Short Circuit's a great movie. We talked about remaking that as well. Number 5.
Short Circuit's fine until you realise, and I didn't learn this until I was like.
I know what you're talking about.
Is that Benjamin, the scientist that created Johnny Five, is an Indian descendant character played by a white man.
I didn't know that. I thought he was Indian.
So I've totally ruined that for you. You watch it now and you're like, oh my god, that's not very nice. Like
I'm
Benjamin.
not going to stop watching the Black and White Minstrel Show who repeats now. I'm not just because they have age. No, I understand that there's things that so it doesn't get shown anymore because of that sort of thing.
I think Short Circuit's in there. As I say, the actor that plays Benjamin is one of the henchmen in the masterpiece that is the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie. But they haven't painted him brown.
Why would you be sitting in a room thinking, right, we're going to have this guy, he's a scientist, we're going to this guy to play? Why wouldn't you just portray the character as white or hire somebody who was Asian? I didn't understand what they thought.
Because 1980s Hollywood.
We have to give the job to a white man, but we want ethnic
minorities. Yeah. Mad, totally mad.
Yeah,
and that's like I know you could, like obviously you look at like Gandhi and stuff like that and be like, well, we've been doing it for years, That's
somebody mocked up a picture using AI that I seen a few weeks ago, and it was they were doing a new movie. It was a movie poster for The King, and it was the biopic of Martin Luther King, starring Tom Hanks, and they had Tom Hanks.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I have been loving like the other thing I watched this week, and this will be the last thing I talk about. So I'm looking at time. I have been watching The Boys, and they have been. I have found season 4 of The Boys not as good as previous season of The Boys, but I am really enjoying they've led very heavy into like the Voight network and how Voight as a company operates, and there's amazing bits where like is it Tech Night, one of the members of Voight's superhero cabal comes out and he's like, it's been almost a year since our last Tech Night movie. So you know what that means? Reboot. And then they're talking about, and then A-Train has a line about like, I can honestly say this is our best film because we've just finished reshooting extra scenes after we did the initial set of reshoots. So it's going to be that so you know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Finish
reshooting the reshoots.
In the comics. He's a brilliant character in the comics. He was like the Batman comic. I don't think they ever really used him in the TV show, did they?
It was in GB. It was in an episode of GB. Tech Night, yeah. And they kind of allude to his proclivities, but it's nowhere near as graphic as comic. Nowhere near.
Yeah. again, I think the boys season 4 feels a wee bit. I think it's suffering a wee bit from they push these characters to their limits, and they made a couple of storyline choices, particularly with Huey, that I haven't enjoyed this season. And I'm like, like Huey's supposed to be the good one, you know, like, and obviously they play around with the how bad can they make him, how bad can they make some of the things he has to do be, and still maintain his innocence and his. Obviously, he initially entered the joining the boys to avenge his fiance, and then by season 4, I'm like, he's making choices that I like he's that's maybe the point, and I'm not getting there yet. But
this is the thing that you get to see that guys let their characters go to a TV show and something like that, and they didn't have the control over that. Because if you've read The Boys, I've read every episode of The Boys, and Huey is Huey throughout it. Huey never loses his centre, his focus, why he's there and stuff like this. Up to including the sort of the finale with what happens with Butcher. If you've read the comics, you'll know kind of what I'm talking about. That Butcher sort of relies on Huey to do something because he knows Huey will do the right thing. The show's never captured that for me. It's good, but I've got to treat it as something completely different. It's separate from. I've got that, and it's not going to be affected by it. I don't know if anybody else has read it.
I think these things are best when you take them when you can completely separate the two entities. I think The Boys is at its best when it's satirising the world we live in, but the more bits are so in your face at the moment that it sometimes does make it a bit of a tough one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I have an audience for it, but it just takes me out of what's going on for a bit.
It's not necessary. I think, yeah, there was nothing like Garth Ennis writes unnecessary violence sometimes and unnecessary cruelty and stuff like that. That's why I could only read so much Frost unremittingly bleak all the time. Just things like that. You had to go up after a while. But most of the time he was able to contain himself, but I don't think he's been well served by Preacher or The Boys. If he wanted to get his vision out there. But I'm sure he made shed loads of money. So
I'm sure he's not complaining. Has anyone got anything else they want to complain about before we call it quits? I know John's need to get away. That probably did. Anyone else want to chat? Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations again on 5 years. Doing so well, and with 17 days left, I'm excited to see just how bigger it gets. Like massive success again. So congratulations.
I really do appreciate you letting me come on and talk about it. It's very hard not to bore my wife with it 24/7. So she's going to be a break, but it is nice to come and talk about it with you, and thank you. You've done a lot for it. I really appreciate it.
Always welcome. Whenever you've got a book out, come on and see us and we'll talk about whatever.
You really know that. It's always just nice to have you. Anyone got anything else they want to chat about before we say goodbye? That's it.
Oh,
Anybody that's interested, the link to the Pioneers Kickstarter is in the show notes. So you should keep it, and also the comments there. Next week, I'll play around with a couple of guests, see what we got. We might have Emily, the Glasgow Beer Girl, join us next week. If she's got time in her schedule. Me and Andrew Petter. I think Stu Petter as well at Dundee Brewgooders. She's quite an influential Instagram blogger in the Glasgow beer scene, so which is also good banner. She kicked my ass in a pretend wrestling match as well. She's just good banner. So I thought it was nice to get her on. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. Good luck to England on Sunday.
I didn't think I'd get out of here without talking about football, so thank you. More luck than judgment. But one more game will do. I
remember when I was a child living and running about the streets of Barcelona, where I come from. That's why I'll be on my shirt.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right, cheers, everyone.
Good. Good night.